Mr. Chairman, office bearers of the Chartered Accountants Association, and friends who are here in large numbers, chartered accountants, citizens of Ahmedabad, I thank you very much for this great opportunity to address on Saturday morning. I did not expect such a crowd. I thought chartered accountant people were practical people who valued their time and not come so early in the morning. Anyway, I'm very pleased. I'm thankful for this subject also, because I'm writing a book on it, which would come out next April, May, on the subject, exact subject of the Indian economy, the challenges and the way forward. This place also happens to be where my wife was with her parents. She was living here. She got a degree from Ahmedabad. So for her also it's a great memory to see the house. She told me where her bedroom was when we were passing that main place. And Gujarat is a place I admire, because during the emergency, it was the Gujaratis in America who helped me win the war against emergency. Today I want to begin by dividing my talk in three parts. First, I will talk about the trends since 2014 and compare it with what happened before. Then I will specify the challenges that we are facing. And finally, I will explain how to overcome the obstacles and end up being a global economic power along with China and the United States. That is, a global triangle or a global triumvirate will emerge, in my opinion, after 2030. And who will be first, who will be second, who will be third will depend on a number of circumstances, which I'll explain also. Now, I must begin by explaining to you as a professor of economics that there is a difference between microeconomics and macroeconomics. Microeconomics deals with bilateral economic transactions, buying and selling, that kind of thing. But macroeconomic deals with economic policy. And macroeconomics is the economy as a whole, as a general equilibrium system. The difference is when you have microeconomics, knowledge only of microeconomics, you will only know how to buy and sell, at what price, what's appropriate price, if the price is high, what your demand is, if your price is low, what your demand is, etc. But when it comes to macroeconomics, if you raise the interest rate at one point, it has an effect on the whole economy. For example, if the interest rate is raised, then yes, the money supply will contract because you'll give less loans, but the cost of capital will go up, so small and medium industries will collapse. If small and medium industries collapses, then unemployment will result, and that will set up a spiral. In 1925, the United States President called all the leading economists to the White House, and he said, there's too much unemployment in the country, what's the solution? At the state of development of economics as a field at that time, the economists said, because the wage rates due to unions, trade unions, is so high, therefore the unemployment is more, because there's no incentive to increase employment. So you must persuade the trade unions to lower the wage rates. Then people will employ more and your unemployment will go away. It looked like a good logic to the President of the United States. He spoke to the unions and then they agreed. And the wages were cut in 1926. And then the President discovered that after cutting the wages, unemployment increased. So therefore there was a crisis because that spiral began going and led to the Great Depression of 1930. So that time all economists of Europe, America, Britain, all of them were assembled together, and it was led by John Maynard Keynes, who said that this argument given by your economists was for microeconomics. But in macroeconomics what has happened is, because you lowered the wage rate, the purchasing power of the society went down, and because the purchasing power went down, therefore the demand went down, and therefore because demand went down, the borderline companies all closed down, and there was more unemployment. So it is wrong to come to this conclusion on that basis. That was my quarrel with Raghuram Rajan. He is not an economist. He was IIT graduate, went to Ahmedabad here in All India, Indian Institute of Management, IIM. And then he went to MIT and got a PhD in financial studies. And he was a microeconomist. And he raised the interest rate and kept on raising it. And when I raised the matter, he said, well, I am trying to control inflation. Well, I said, you are like a doctor who didn't know how to bring the temperature down of a patient. So he concluded the only way to do it is to kill the patient, then the temperature will definitely come down. Since he was so obstinate and arrogant, I then led a campaign, kick him out, send him out. And ultimately the Prime Minister obliged and he was sent home. But look at the damage that has been done. Small and medium industries have been crippled. They are the ones who are giving you most of the employment in the country. So when I am advocating this income tax abolition, I am not talking like a microeconomist. Where will the resources come from? I am not a banya, I am an economist. And I will explain to you where the resources will come. You will get more resources if you abolish income tax than what you have today. I'll prove it to you. And there are many alternative sources also. So let me begin by saying first, in the last 3 years of the Indian economy, please don't go by these quarterly data. They're all bogus. I'm telling you because my father founded the Central Statistical Organization. And as a little boy, he used to take me to office. I'm sort of immersed in that. Recently, I went when the minister, Mr. Sadanand Gowda, when he was minister, I don't think he's minister anymore, or maybe he is, but he invited me because he says, I don't know economics, I'm a lawyer. I told him, why don't you tell that to Mr. Jaitley, because he also should know that. So he called the CSO person, and because there was pressure to put out data on the demonetization. So they put out the data, there's no impact. So yeah, I said, I'm feeling nervous because I know there is an impact, but the statistician is saying, what do I do? So I asked the director of the CSO, how did you estimate, on February 1 the budget was presented, I said, how did you estimate the GDP for this quarter when the demonetization was November 7th? You gave a printed economic survey report on the 1st of February, which means it went for printing at least 3 weeks before. So on the first week of January, you submitted a report. And you calculated GDP to show no impact. How did you calculate it? So he said, which particular portion? I said the informal sector, for which we don't have a statistical sample, but we take national sample survey data, which is not on a regular basis. It does once a year. I said there was no survey. So what did he do? So he tells me that the informal sector's output last year as a ratio of the organized sector's output last year, that ratio applied to the organized sector in January. I said, but that relationship has changed. He said, what could I do? I was under pressure, give me the data, give me the data, so I gave it. So don't believe any quarterly data. Nothing less than annual. Going up, down, this thing, all this. And don't believe any of these Moody's and Fitches and all these rascals. You can pay them money and get any report published. We've got a CSO, we've got a tradition of collecting statistics. So rely on them. Our agency can, but don't push them to do something they can't do. So according to that, I have taken the last 3 years, 2014, 15, 2015, 16, 2017, 18. That means April 1 to 31st March next year. This crazy system also needs to be changed. We should start from January 1 to January 1. But anyway, so many things of the British, we are just carrying on for nothing. So these 3 years, the growth rate I calculated. And by the way, you've got to be very careful. I have one of the most famous papers written with the world famous economist who's called the Einstein of economics, Paul Samuelson, on the theory of index numbers, which is used by European Union, United Nations, all. Only India doesn't use my paper. But I sent it to a PM also. I said, see, European Union, EU is using it, United Nations is using it, why don't you use it? But of course, Prime Minister doesn't decide these things. It's decided in the Finance Ministry, and they didn't agree. So now, I'm not going to this index number question. But on the basis of my assessment and calculation, the 3 years, 2011, 2014, 15, 2015, 16, 2016, 17, the growth rate I estimated as an average annual of 7.6% per year. Now what is the significance of this number? Generally we'd like to know when will it double our GDP? When will our GDP double? That's a very convenient way of explaining to the public. According to a formula that has been developed, if you write 72 and divide it by the rate of growth, that number is the number of years it will take to double. So if it is 72 and the growth rate is 9, then every 8 years there will be a doubling. So you can see that if it's 7.6, it will be maybe 10 point some, 10 or between 10 and 11 years for doubling. The UPA for previous 3 years, 2011 to 2011, 12, etc., works out according to me 7.1%. So there is no doubt there has been some acceleration during the NDA period, but that's not enough. Our growth rate must be not less than 10%. People say 10%. Well, between 1950 to 1990, the growth rate of the Indian economy is only 3.5% per year. I wrote a book in 1972 that if you give up socialism, then Indian economy will grow at least 8% per year. And Mrs. Gandhi took the book on the, at that time a full professor at IIT Delhi. And Mrs. Gandhi took the book in the parliament, Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee, Advani, everybody was on the opposition, and said, here is a book written by one of your people. I had by then joined Jansangh. And it says that India can grow at 10% per year, produce atom bombs, be self-reliant, all this. She says, is this man an economist or Santa Claus? And how come he is a professor at IIT, a government institution? So next day I got a letter from IIT, you are dismissed from professorship. That was, now they are talking about tolerance. You should have seen the tolerance at that time. I got at 5:15 a letter. I got a letter at 5:15 saying you are dismissed from 5 o'clock. So I went to the director, I am a full professor. You invited me from Harvard. I left a professorship there to come here in a patriotic sense to build a department. And it's a permanent employment and you have dismissed me. So he said, I can't help it, I got orders from top. You fight it in court. So that was my first court experience. Fortunately, my wife gave up her teaching of mathematics in IIT, and she went to law school, got a degree, and then she filed the case. After 22 years, I won the case. But in the meantime, the Jansangh brought me into Parliament, and then the emergency came, and then Janata Party came. And the first day I met Moraji Desai after became Prime Minister, he said, you were dismissed from IIT, no? I said, yes. So he said, I'm making you member of the Board of Governors of IIT. So I said, Moraji Bhai, how can I sit with those people who dismissed me? He said, don't worry, I've dismissed all of them. So a new board was constituted and I became Board of Governors of the very body which dismissed me. So therefore, but I didn't misuse it. I continued fighting in court. When I won in 1991, after 22 years, and but I was cabinet minister in Chandrasekhar's government, so there was no point in my going back to teaching. So I went there, took charge, and therefore on the record it is I have served IIT for 22 years. See? So, and I said, give me back my back salary at 12% interest, not 9%, but 12% interest. I will get it back. It will be about 2 crores pocket money, but the fact is that these things were happening at that time. The only objection to me was to say giving up socialism will lead to growth rates of 10% or thereabouts. When Chandrasekhar became Prime Minister, he asked me, so I prepared the blueprints, I implemented it for exports, but our government didn't last long, it fell. Mr. Narasimha Rao became Prime Minister. He invited me to join the government and he said, but one condition on which I'll make you a minister, you must join Congress. I said, I will not join Congress. She said, why? I said, Congress is the family property of one family and you are a tenant. So how can a tenant invite another tenant? So if you want my help, you could do something else. So he created a body called GATT Commission, WTO and all that, gave me cabinet ranks. So together we worked, and all the media gave the credit to Manmohan Singh. I tell people in 5 years as finance minister he brought so many economic reforms, then why as 10 years as prime minister he couldn't bring a single economic reform? It was Narasimha Rao who took my blueprints and implemented it, and the credit for the economic reform should go to Narasimha Rao and nobody else. And our growth rate went up from 3.5% per year. For 40 years, 3.5%. They used to call it the Hindu rate of growth, although it was a communist rate of growth. So from in 40 years, 3.5, it went up to 8%. But what happened? Narasimha Rao lost the election. Why? Because Narasimha Rao, I had warned them, please don't do economic reforms where people don't see immediate results. Some of the reforms will be immediate results. Don't tell me it will filter down. He abolished quotas, licenses in one notification. And so the loss to the touts who used to get licenses from ministers and sell it in the black market, the loss was immediate. And they all ganged up against him. And they did propaganda, this reform is for rich people. Because the people were not seeing the benefits. Those days you could get only one car called Ambassador car, which was 1944 model, never improved. Today you see, there's so many cars that you're having traffic jams and traffic jams. Economic reforms changed everything. But the vested interests lost immediately, and the gainers or the beneficiaries did not see any immediate change. And that's precisely what I have told Narendra Modi. Talk about all these reforms, make in India, do this, do that. It will all take time. It will produce results. But the public can be fooled into saying this is all bogus. So do something which the public likes very much. That is why I said income tax. Abolish income tax. People immediately get benefit. Who will get benefit? Middle class. Rich people have chartered accountants. So they'll put expense account, this thing, deduction. Poor people are below the line. So, but these new young people coming as professionals want to do their own startups. They are the ones who are harassed. Ordinary people are harassed. So you abolish it. Doesn't matter if only few countries have done it. We have to do it because our country is so large, that this system is so large and subject to so much discretion that this become an agency for corruption. And people immediately feel it. Where will you get the resources? Oh, resources. I went to Supreme Court and abolished the licenses allocation in the 2G and said auction should take place, not one discretionary, first come, first serve. We have been holding auctions since 2014. We are getting, first year we got 3 lakh crores, second year we got 4 lakh crores. Now after 2G will come 3G, after 3G will come 4G, all auctions. And we have not yet auctioned the coal. And when you auction the coal blocks, you get 11 lakh crores. And what is the present income tax revenue contribution? Just 4 lakh crores. So you can raise it by alternative means. It's not necessary. I'm not going into bank transaction. We are not ready for it yet. But I will say, resource not problem. Now look at it from another point. What will the people of India do if you give them 9% on fixed deposit? They'll put that money in fixed deposit, the middle class. You will get money for investment. Investment will generate growth. Through indirect taxes, you will get more resources. So the economic, when you look at it macro, you can always find a way. People told me if you abolish quotas and licenses, there will be a flood and there will be this thing, black market, this thing. Nothing of the kind happened. You cannot run Indian economy unless you give people incentives. You can't force them. You can't burden them. So therefore I am seeking a change through what? Through incentivizing the public. So therefore I will say, if you look today the effect of all that we have done in these 3 years, whether it's GST or whether it's bringing in new regulations, now the new one on the bank, what impact this rising interest rates has had on NPAs, all that. The rate of growth of gross fixed capital formation, that is, in other words, the hard investment component of your country, that has declined from 35.6% of GDP, that is, the investment was about 35.6% of GDP in 2011-12 to 28.8% this year. There is a decline in the level of investment, and private investment much faster. This is a very unhealthy trend. We have to turn it around. Income tax is the only way. Then, rate of inflation is now started accelerating because of shortages that have been created. Or certain things that you've learned. You have allowed what is called as forward trading for industrial companies in agriculture. So there is a lot of stocking going on. People go and buy it cheap in the wholesale market and put it in cold storage and then release it. So all these vegetable prices going up and down is because of that. Then we have the rate of unemployment has sharply increased in our country because of the closure and the sickness in the medium and small industries. And the industrial growth rate, which is never less than 10% per year, in the last 3 years or 4 years or the 3.5 years, is growing only at 3.4%. So this is something that you have to rectify. And the worst of all, agricultural growth rate for the last 3 years is 1.4%. So where is all this 7.6 growth rate in GDP come? It has come from the services and it has come from construction and things like that. These are not assets producing. The asset producing, the employment generation comes from the industrial sector and the agricultural sector. And both are growing at very low rates because they're all harassed with a number of things which we have to rectify. So what is the challenge? Challenge number one, growth rate we must target for 10% per year. 2, we must grow in the agricultural sector at 8% per year. Whether we can do it or not, I will explain when we discuss way forward. 3, the medium and small industries should get such cheap capital that they grow at 14% because they will generate for semi-skilled and unskilled employment, which we need in our country. It's a democracy. People must have jobs. And we have to be very careful. You see, every day I hear this talk about foreign direct investment. And what is this foreign direct investment? When I was Commerce Minister, now I am talking about 1991, I was visited by a delegation of Walmart. And Walmart said, I hear you are opposing our coming to India. I said, of course I am. They said, but you are known to be free enterpriser, this, that, all that. How come you would oppose Walmart? I said, because Walmart is getting loans from you Walmart people are getting loans from your banks at 2% interest. Our traders who are crores and crores, they're getting it at not less than 12%. That's the prime lending rate. So you get 2% capital, you come to India and you hire our cheap labor. And what do our traders do? They have to get loans at not less than 12% and compete for you with the cheap labor, and the labor wage rates will go up. So this is not level playing field. So we can, unless I can give my traders 2% per year capital, I cannot agree to this. This is not a competitive situation. It is rigged against them and rigged in your favor. So he said, what's the solution? I said, solution is like this. You allow our Indian companies to go to America with labor from India and build roads and houses in United States. We'll participate in tender. We will win it without doubt because our labor is cheap. They said, but that is immigration problem. I said, that is your problem, not my problem. You want to come with your cheap capital and you take advantage of my cheap labor, but you don't allow me to take my cheap labor and take advantage of your cheap capital. What kind of equality is this? So thanks to that objection today, even today Walmart has not been able to come. We have to be careful. Only thing for which FDI should be brought is which brings innovation. We have new ways of doing things. All economic growth acceleration for the last 200 years is due to innovation. Railroads. What caused the industrial revolution? Railroads. Railways. Bessemer steel blast furnace. Then the Americans came. They brought in wireless. They brought in teleprinters. Later on fax machines. Later on internet. Americans are the most innovating country. You cannot defeat America economically unless you can do better than them in innovation. That we can do if we motivate our young people. Our young population is the highest proportion in the world for any country, especially large countries. Average age of an Indian is 26 years. Average age of the Chinese is 35 due to that one child per family policy. Average age of Americans is 37, which they have lowered it because of immigration. Now Trump has come, he stopped that immigration, that will also go up. Average age of European 46. Average age of a Japanese 50. And you see, they have social security system. So previously, large numbers of people were coming into the labor force, paying gratuity, this thing, provident fund, all that. All that money was collected to pay pension for retiring people. Now the number of people coming in is getting smaller and smaller, and the number of people retiring and living longer is increasing. All of Europe is in a pension bomb today. We don't have that problem. So we are very bright people. Our people have performed very well everywhere in the world except in India. They are head of Amazon, they are head of Google, they are head of Microsoft. I mean, Indians are all over. All the Patels have captured the motels. So they are now calling Patels as Potels. So therefore, I would say that this young population, education becomes very important. We can give high-class education as shown by IIMs and IITs. We should liberate it from all this bureaucratic hold and reward research. Today, people are not rewarded. This senior professor swallows up the work of the young researcher and passes it off as his own. Otherwise, he'll fire him, put some false charges on him. Encourage people, reward them. More than film stars on television, you should see these young people who have done very well in examination. They should be celebrated in our media and shown this as an example. Everyone, and in our country there is no shortage, because women are as bright as men, probably brighter. Because in Brahma's cabinet, the main portfolios are with women. Finance with Lakshmi, defense with Durga, and education with Saraswati. The male gods had nothing except one, information broadcasting with Narad Muni. And women dictated. Mahabharata was by dictation. Draupadi dictated. There has to be a war. I must get the blood of Dushasan so I can wash my hair with it. Sita dictated the war against Lanka because Hanuman came and said, sit on my back, I'll take you. She said, no, I will not go like that. Rama has to come and kill Ravan because so many women are here enslaved. It's not only a question of my freedom. So women have played that role in this Islamic period, in the British period. Women have lost their status. We have to rethrone them. Now it's a knowledge economy, and as far as it's only brains that matter, physical strength doesn't matter. So we can double the amount of researchers we have. In fact, now in the ISRO you find large number of women who have played the major role in launching these satellites and these rockets. So therefore this country's real strength is brains, and we have demonstrated throughout history. Calculus we invented, they stole it. Even on the question of this Pushpak Viman, where a lot of people are making fun, I got the original document called Vimana Shastra. In Vimana Shastra, I only looked for one thing. What is the fuel they used? Air fuel. And it is written there, mercury. So I asked an aeronautical engineer, can mercury be a fuel? He said, that's the fuel of the future. I said, why? He says, one drop of mercury has more energy than 10 barrels of oil. So in the future, once we have mastered the technology, this mercury will become the fuel. Now, our people knew it at that time. And they had this conception that it could be used as air fuel. Same thing with all the other things. We have 60% of the world's thorium lying in the sands of India. I found this out when I heard that somebody was caught in Tamil Nadu for sand smuggling. I said, which crazy man will smuggle sand? Sand is available everywhere in the world. But why from Tamil Nadu this craze for smuggling sand? It turned out that it has monazite, which is thorium. World is running out of uranium. They are looking for substitutes. Americans have already started research on thorium. Homi Bhabha had already started in 1952 research on thorium, knowing this. Unfortunately, he was killed in an air crash. After that, we never pursued that study. If we pursue that study, thorium will power electricity in our country to the extent that even all our neighbors will get it. Not only get 24 hours in India, but 24 hours in all our neighboring countries. This is the approach. We are fighting over water. Tamil Nadu is every day fighting with Karnataka on Kaveri. Why? There is plenty of water. Where in the ocean, Israel doesn't have a single river. So yet they get water 24 hours a day in their tap, because they desalinate seawater. Seawater is taken out, salt is taken out, drinking water and for irrigation. Israel is now completely green. It's an agricultural exporting country. Right from the sands of Israel today, you are having these exports because they have used science and technology. We have such a large coastline, and Tamil Nadu and Karnataka are fighting. In Tamil Nadu, when there was a dispute, the press came to me, do you support Tamil Nadu or Karnataka? I said, I support Karnataka. They said, you are Tamilian, you are supporting Karnataka. I said, yes, they don't have water. But you have plenty of water. He said, where is the water? Kaveri, there is no water. I said, you want Kaveri water or do you want water? You first tell me that. Then they cooled down and said, yes, where do we get the water from? I said, desalinate seawater. 4 desalination plants, you will have enough water to irrigate the whole of Tamil Nadu, plus pump water in the opposite direction of Kaveri so that Karnataka also gets some more water. That is the potential in everything in India. If you connect Ganga to Kaveri, you will generate huge amount of employment for those tunnels, and you will raise the agricultural output by 25%. Look at the potential of our agriculture. When I say we must grow at 8% per year in agriculture, what is based on potential? Cheapest price of agricultural products, India. Go to any WTO publication, you will see that. Wheat is sold at 1/4 of what is sold in America. Rice is sold 1/6 of what is sold in Japan and South Africa. And in our country, God has given you 12 months of the year to do agriculture. Sun is shining. In America, 5 months of the year you got the snow. You can't do agriculture. Same thing with Europe. And part of China also the same problem. But in India, you can do 12 months of the year. That means 3 crops. But we are only growing 25% of the land for 1 crop extra. And the yield per acre is one of the lowest in the world. Indian Council of Agricultural Research, Indian Agricultural Research Institute, experimental plots is producing 6 to 8 times per acre what the general country is producing. The same country, the same mud, but you find the experimental plots are putting. Why can't we do the same thing all over India? Because we are not providing for fertilizer, water, electricity and all that. These are the focus areas. India's future lies not with industrialization. India's future lies with only two things: agricultural globalization and innovation. These are the only two areas which will accelerate your growth. And this is what the government should be focusing on. And that is what we need a complete focus on. You see, the other day somebody was saying you are all bothering about cows and all that. Well, Indian cow is a special cow. It is called Bos indicus. Way forward, no problem at all. And if you have to compete with China, there are plenty of ways to compete with China. What is China's secret of success? Importing semi-processed goods from Korea, Japan, Philippines, Singapore, Taiwan, adding value, putting the chap of made in China and exporting to the West. Why can't these countries, Japan and Taiwan and all, export directly to America and Europe? Because the cost of labor is too high. So China has cheap labor. So they send it there. And the amount they pay to get this and this value added, they get several times that price in America and Europe. So America has a trade deficit with East Asia, but it has a huge trade surplus with America and Europe. What should India do? India should also tell these East Asian countries, you are a democratic country, we have patent laws, you have courts, we can give you all the other benefits, you won't be arbitrarily arrested as in China. So why don't you come to India? They say because you've got a lousy infrastructure. Roads, terrible, potholes, everywhere potholes. I don't know why we can't build roads. We build beautiful roads in Malaysia, Nigeria, Iraq, but you can't build it in India. It's because of corruption. And corruption is a disease, it's a cancer. It should be fought. It cannot be celebrated. You cannot claim that you are not doing it when you are doing it. Today, Congress party is celebrating 2G victory, but in the High Court they will lose, I can tell you, without doubt. When I first filed my 2G spectrum scam case for cancelling the licenses, I went to the High Court. The High Court dismissed it. And the Congress did propaganda against me. Swamy is all the time making allegations and all that. There is no proof. I went to Supreme Court, license cancelled. In our system it is like that. Sometimes we have three-tier system. In one system you win and lose in another. But the final authority is Supreme Court. And this judgment is so bad that we won't have to go to Supreme Court, High Court will be enough. But look at the audacity. People who have put money abroad today are celebrating that we are against them because of vendetta and so on. The fact is that there is no doubt there has been huge corruption. 120 lakh crores are abroad. Yes, we had promised, the Prime Minister had promised we'll bring it back, and he has not brought it back. But that doesn't mean he won't bring it back in the next 1 year, especially if he makes some changes in the Finance Ministry. It's very easy to do it. I don't know why the Finance Ministry is not doing it. Tell the UN. The UN passed a resolution in 2005 in the Convention on Corruption. And they said if any country passes a law in Parliament that all money in the name of their citizens in 70 what they call as secret banking countries like Virgin Island or Cayman Island or Macau, all these kind of places where there is secret banking, wherever, say, the Indian citizen has an account, that stands nationalized, and the UN will then help you get all that money back. Egypt got Mubarak's accounts money this way. Libya got Gaddafi's money this way. Philippines got Marcos' money this way. But we are not, we are resisting. They are not against. The finance ministry says, no, this will not do. I explained this to the Prime Minister. He said, send me a note. I sent him a note. No action. But it will ultimately happen. I think we should thank the 2G court judgment, because it's given us a shock and woken us up. And because therefore we will do much better work. But this Indian economy was once upon a time the world's most prosperous economy. In 1100 AD, our share in world GDP was 54%. Today it is 11%. And when we were became independent, we were just 4%. The British bled us, and those foreign invaders who came, they bled us, and we have come to this state. But we have survived. And now our people should be empowered, and they should not be harassed. They should be incentivized. If they earn money, they can use it productively. And therefore you should have your tax system, your other system in such a way that they don't feel harassed, they feel encouraged, they are made participants in the growth. Narasimha Rao proved that if you remove big clamps, growth will rise. The economy will not collapse as it was predicted. The same way, if you remove income tax, if you simplify sales tax, excise tax, all these, and reduce it to a few commodities only, if you build an infrastructure which is world class, which we have built it in other countries, we can build it in our own country. And even in our own country, from Bombay to Pune, Mr. Nitin Gadkari built one of the finest highways. It is reduced travel to Pune by 50%. We can do it. It requires that focus. At the moment today, we don't have that focus, but that focus will definitely come. I can say quite proudly that I belong to a party which is totally not family oriented. No family controls this party. And we believe in a unity of the vast majority of the people. And therefore I am sure that since we are committed to the country, we will bring about all these changes, and it will only take 10 years to become a global power for India. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for briefing current economic scenario and giving a pleasant